First, let's focus on the boy's oral production. Since the student fulfilled the 3 prerequisite task completion descriptors, the discourse mode, the pattern of exposition, and the length or time allotment, his performance can be assessed. Let's begin with the first criterion.
Communicative effectiveness. Remember, this aspect consists of 5 different descriptors. Regarding the first descriptor, the student understands the message. He comprehends what the other student says. There's no need for him to ask the speaker to repeat or rephrase what she says. Therefore, the grade given to this descriptor is 5.
The second descriptor is the use of conversational strategies required for the course. There are several and different conversational strategies a speaker can use, and the nature of this dialogue implies the use of follow-up questions and turn-takings, which he does accordingly. In addition, he expresses a personal comment. Although it would have been possible for him to use more conversational strategies, thus creating a better sense of extensive, natural, and smooth communication, those were not strictly required for the 2 participants to understand each other. Therefore, the grade for this descriptor is 5.
As for the third descriptor, the use of appropriate register, the language he uses matches the type, context, and purpose of the task. Consequently, the grade in this descriptor is 5.
Next we have production of clear ideas. All utterances in the conversation are easily understood. It is clear what he means in each of his interventions. Most of his ideas are relevant to the main topic of the conversation. Each idea makes the discourse coherent and easily understood. So the grade for this descriptor is 5.
Now, the last descriptor in this aspect, production of relatively fluent speech despite some problems with formulation resulting in pauses. He replies with certain ease, and doesn't take long to structure and produce his replies to the other speaker's questions. Since there's an evident sense of smooth flow in his speech, the grade for this descriptor is 5.
Now let's see how to get the final grade for communicative effectiveness. Remember that there are 5 descriptors in this aspect. The student understands the message, use of conversational strategies required for the current course, use of appropriate register, production of clear ideas, and production of relatively fluent speech despite some problems with formulation resulting in pauses. In each one of them, the grade was 5. Then we just have to add them, divide the result, 25, by 5, the number of descriptors, and the result, 5, is the final grade for communicative effectiveness.
Let's continue with the second criterion of the rubric, pronunciation, which has 3 descriptors. Correct pronunciation of the vocabulary required for the course, correct use of intonation patterns required for the course, correct stress of isolated words or words within a chunk.
There are only 4 words he mispronounces in his different interventions: fire, 20, called, place. As a result, the given grade for this descriptor is 5.
As for the second descriptor, correct use of intonation patterns required for the course, he uses rising and falling intonation for questions, answers or statements in a correct way. It is easy to identify when he is asking, answering, or stating based on his intonation. That is why the grade for this descriptor is 5. For the third and last descriptor in this criterion, correct stress of isolated words or words within a chunk, we can note there aren't any noticeable mistakes regarding word stress, so the grade here is also 5.
Finally, let's do the math to get the final grade for pronunciation. Remember that there are 3 descriptors in this aspect: correct pronunciation of the vocabulary required for the course, correct use of intonation patterns required for the course, correct stress of isolated words or words within a chunk. Again, we have the same grade for each one of the 3 descriptors, 5. So we add them, divide the total by 3, the number of descriptors, and the result, 5, is the final grade for pronunciation.
Next, we move to the third criterion called vocabulary. Since this performance corresponds to Course 10, we only focus on descriptor A, correct use of sufficient vocabulary.
The vocabulary used is adequate for the purpose of the task, even though there are 6 words that are not used correctly. It took place on in. One gets the impression that the student is not sure which is the correct word to use here, on or in. In this case, it is in. In May 20th. In this case, the student must have said on May 20th, because this is the correct preposition in this case. Take revenge of. The correct way to say this is take revenge for, and not of. Members of the church. Since the student does not specify what church he talks about, he must have said members of a church. They accused him from. We accuse somebody of something and not from something. Why does he want to make the plastic surgery? In this case, the verb make is not the correct word to be used in this sentence. The person they are talking about doesn't want to make, but to have the surgical procedure done. Accordingly, and considering both these errors, the vocabulary the student used correctly, and the length of the boy's interventions, the grade given to this descriptor is 4.
Now, let's get the final grade for this third criterion. Since there is only one descriptor, there is no need to do any math. The grade for this descriptor becomes the grade for the criterion. That is 4.
Finally, we get to the fourth and last criterion in this rubric, structure. Since this performance corresponds to Course 10, we only focus on descriptor A, which states, a reasonable and effective use of common sentence patterns.
Out of the 13 interventions he makes during the conversation, 5 of them are incorrect in terms of grammatical structures. Let's spot the different mistakes he makes. Yeah, I do. There is a mistake here because the student is incorrectly answering the question. Did you finished? Which is in simple past. He must have said, yeah, I did. Who set on fire a church? In this case, there's a mistake with the order of words. The correct way is who set a church on fire. Where does it took place? Finally, here the student must have structured his question either in present or past simple. So the right questions could be, where does it take place? Or, where did it take place? About a men who. Here he must have used the singular form man instead of men, since he is talking about a single person. A members of. There is no agreement between the indefinite article a and the plural noun members. According to later information in this oral intervention, we can infer the correct form is some members of. All in all, there's relative mastery of the required grammar to develop this oral task appropriately. That is why the grade given to the boy regarding his high control over grammatical structures is 3.
To conclude, let's do the math to get the final grade for the boy's oral production in this task. First, we need to add the grades given to each of the 4 aspects in the rubric. Communicative effectiveness, 5.0. Pronunciation, 5.0. Vocabulary, 4.0. And structure, 3.0. So let's add. 5 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 equals 17. Now let's divide 17 by 4, the number of criteria, which equals 4.25. This grade, 4.25, is the final grade for his oral production.